Good afternoon. I'd like to thank Director Lacey and the Civil Rights Commission for allowing the Finance Department to present at your meeting today. I'd also like to thank Nicole Gleason and our City Council members for participating today. Latrice has provided us some guidelines for the presentation, and hopefully we have all those points addressed. However, if you have additional questions, you can always ask them during the presentation, or you can give those questions to Latrice later and have them sent to us, and we'll get the responses sent out to you. So basically, here's the budget team. Nicole Gleason is the acting city administrator. Hannah Whitehurst and Tegan Trees is the administrative support for the budget process. Basha Gerlach, Tom Lenahan, and myself are the finance representatives, and then Clay Merritt handles the capital improvement program. The finance team and Nicole Gleason are, yes. So we'll start with the budget definition, which is basically a financial plan for the city that accounts for the revenues in a given period and allocates resources to city programs. We allocate resources to departments to reflect our priorities and policies of the city council, and ultimately the budget assists us in controlling spending. It's a legal process. I'm sorry. The budget process is a legal process, and that runs from July 1st of each year through June 30th of each year. And basically, it's a communication device that allows us to get our message to all stakeholders in the community. I'm sorry. And city council departments. We get city council input. We post everything on the website to get it out to the community, and that defines our business plans, core competencies, goals, projects, and projection of funds. The budget document is a 638-page document, and it's pretty comprehensive. Next. So basically, one of the things that Latrice wanted us to talk about is our budget philosophy. And the basic thing is that we have a balanced budget and our expenses do not exceed our revenues. Also, we want to make sure that we hit our liquidity targets, and basically liquidity targets are our kind of rainy day fund. And if ever we were in a situation where we had to spend those funds, we'd have to put together a plan to replenish those. Our budget philosophy, it's basically planning. We want to make sure that we are looking to the future, and that we're, some of the things that we do in our planning is we prepare our CIP. Our CIP is a 6-year plan. We approve the first year. However, then we also do things like evaluating our rates for our sewer utility and evaluating our general fund for stability. Another key point of our philosophy is we want to have flexibility in our budget. Just like the average person, if they spend every dollar that they have and max out their credit cards, when emergency arises, a muffler goes out or whatever, they don't have money to spend to fix those type of things. The city doesn't want to be in that position, and we want to make sure that we have flexibility when things arise, that we can address those. We have conservative budget practices. For example, we don't use one-time revenues for ongoing expenses. For example, if we were to sell a piece of land for $100,000, we wouldn't operationalize those funds. interest rates. When we budget interest rates, since we're doing the budgets so far in advance of the actual fiscal year, we tend to keep our the revenues that we budget low because we don't know what the future holds. If we, for example, in 25, if we would have budgeted that we had 5% interest and the Fed lowered the rates to 4.5%, we would have over budgeted our revenues. So we try to be conservative. The one other thing that we do is we budget personnel at 100%. The city has limited, we match funds to the expenditures. We don't spend road use tax on sewer projects, et cetera. We keep the funding source to the expenditure. And our budget is really core competency driven, and we focus and continue to deliver current service levels. We look at our current service levels, and we want to make sure that we are keeping everything at those current service levels. And then ultimately, we have limited resources, and we need to be good. The finance department needs to be good stewards of taxpayer funds and safeguard our money. All right. Okay, the budget process, we use best practices provided by the GFOA, which is the Governmental Financial Officers Association, and the National Advisory Council for the State and Local Budgeting. For the past 29 years, we've received a Distinguished Budget Presentation Award that recognizes the city for transparency in budgeting. The document must meet all the criteria of being a policy document, a financial plan, operations guide, and communication device. Our budget process is clearly defined based on policies that the City Council has approved. Some of the policies that we've had or that we have in place are, we have a 6-year CIP, as I discussed earlier. We approve 1 year. We use performance measures to measure what's happening in our departments. We diversify our revenue sources, review our user fees, and maintain a general fund that's has a 17 to 25% budgeted operating requirements, which is our rainy day fund. The financial plan is a review of expenses that can determine if a goal is being accomplished. As we progress through the year, if we see that funds aren't being spent, maybe that's something that is no longer needed to be budgeted, or one of the things that we notice that, necessarily the money not being spent isn't necessarily a good thing. That just means that something's not being done. The budget process is also a statement of values, where a city is spending its money, where its priorities are, and it guides our decision making by where we review the performance measures, shown that if they're not meeting expected levels, maybe we need to fund that a little bit more. So let me see here. Here's our budget timeline. We're currently have the budget open for departments, and they're able to enter their base budget. As we go through the process, we'll be able to, I'm going to kind of talk about all the different phases here in a second here. All right. The budget process really starts with the biennial citizen survey. The purpose of the survey is to guide decision-making for a wide range of city services. We've started the biennial citizen survey in 2006, and the last one we did was in 2022. We started our most recent one in September of 2024. We typically send out about 5,000 surveys. And then after we get, or the goal is to get about 800 of them back. And then after that, we open up to the public. Some of our top priorities that we have are quality of streets and infrastructure, quality of neighborhoods, business attraction and retention, and quality of police services. And in 2022, the city rated 12 percentage points above the national average and 25 out of 40 topics above the national average. All right. Base development. When we start the base budget development, we start with the payroll projection and we look at the union contracts, or if a contract isn't in place, we estimate what that may be. We might have to revise it later, but we calculate that. We include any step increases for employees and possible increases of healthcare. And typically payroll costs are about 70 to 80% of the budget. For civil rights specifically, the two main revenue sources are the general fund and the fair housing grant. General fund money is pretty competitive since there's a lot of departments that are using that, and it's calculated based on the assessed value multiplied by the rollback for each property tax classification multiplied by the levy rate. And then in 2023, the state passed House File 718, which limits property tax growth and eliminated the library and emergency funds, which put some more restrictions on the general fund. And the fair housing grant, Latrice typically gives us what the amount she expects to receive for that. We evaluate trends in revenues. If for the last 4 years it's been a level of $20,000 per se, and all of a sudden there's an increase of $50,000, we don't start budgeting at the $50,000 level. We make sure that's more of a consistent trend. Core competencies for the city, we have things like potholes, police enforcement, firefighting, but for civil rights specifically, they have anti-discrimination, law enforcement, mediation, conciliation, investigation, and issuance of findings, and civil rights education. Those are the primary core competencies for civil rights. Also, considerations are, we want to align the city council with city council goals and the citizen survey to make sure that we're achieving those goals. So next, for business cases, if a department has a need for anything over $10,000, they submit a business case. First, we ask that departments review their budget, and if they're not spending money in one account, we can shift it over to another account. That's the first thing. But secondly, once we receive that business case, the budget team evaluates it and moves it along. But submitting a business case doesn't necessarily guarantee that will be funded. And really the main consideration for that is whether or not the city has revenues to support the increase. Then we would make a recommendation to council. An approved business case would be entered by our budget team, and currently the budget business cases are due on October 18th. Next item is capital improvement program. We prioritize the request We want departments to prioritize their requests based on need and not wants. We don't want them to load all the projects in the first 2 years of the CIP. That, again, the CIP is a 6-year outlook. And then we want to make sure that the CIP is in alignment with department goals and city council priorities. The next phase that happens in February is the presentation of the budget to council. The city administrator will present the preliminary budget to the mayor or city council. A review of the operation pillars and city council will be given to city council. And basically right now the pillars are well-protected community, sustainable infrastructure, welcoming neighborhoods, high-performing government, and vibrant region. City council goals currently are, some of them are carryover initiatives, where if we're moving something, it's a long-range plan, we would move money from the previous fiscal year to the current fiscal year. Public safety, neighborhood level infrastructure, et cetera. Presentation of the operation budget and CIP would be given to council, and then a review of the city administrator's work plan would be given. And historically, some of the projects have been like Station 3, ARPA, North Park Mall study, water pollution control, capital strategies, and facility investment. Again, with the decision-making goes back to assessing the availability of revenues. Council determines the service level, and if anything needs to be adjusted. We look at business cases and possible additions or realignment packages. And then the last thing that they go over is the capital budget. So the next step is the adoption of the budget. The process, the recommended budget gets presented after the work sessions in about April. The public hearing is required by law, and city council approves the budget. It's then certified on or before April 30th and forwarded to the Iowa Department of Management. If the city fails to certify their budget by the deadline, they'd be limited to the prior year's budget amount, and they would not receive road use tax or local option sales tax until that was received. And then also the city cannot spend any funds after the beginning of the new fiscal year until the budget's been submitted. Amending the budget, obviously there's things that occur that come up, and if there's unexpected revenue or expenditures, those things would need to be amended. If we carry over funding from the previous fiscal year, that would need to be amended in the budget, and any new programs or projects that council wants to incorporate would need to be added. And again, this approval process would go through a public hearing and city council approval, and once done, it would go to the county auditor and the Department of Management. Lastly, we have ongoing review. The budget process really never stops. One of the critical things is the budget monitoring, and our budget manager coordinator sends out a monthly report to council providing the status of the general fund and expenditures, overtime summary. They track the general fund, local option sales tax, trust and agency revenues, along with the health of the health insurance fund. Council also receives a monthly investment report that provides them the types of investments, financial institutions that we invest in, and the interest rates received. And the impact of these ongoing reports is that we have a balanced budget we comply with the state, we ultimately have a positive financial health, and the ability to make changes with flexibility I was talking about earlier. And then when we go to bond, we have a good or high credit rating provided by Moody's and or S&P. Moody's, we currently have a credit rating of AA2, and with S&P, we have a credit rating of AA. Here's some additional information. All the budget book, the budget information is available online. It provides the budget and organizational overview, the budget process and principles, the policies I was talking about earlier, financial reports and discussions, and the citizen survey results. One of the things that Latrice was asking for was a report that she could look at, and we have a couple different options for that. I've provided a kind of an ad hoc report that we put together, and I can give that to Latrice so that she can run that as needed. But we can also provide her some system reports that she can run too. So I can talk with Latrice about this, make sure that these reports are meeting her needs. In conclusion, the budget process is a collaborative effort, and it ensures that the city is meeting our financial obligations and that we're addressing the city's priorities. And again, that we have a high credit rating at the end of the day, so that when we go out to bond for money, that we get the lowest interest rate possible. So there we go. You guys have any questions?
Thank you for your presentation. Yeah, we'll have some questions, and this is the basic process that the city uses to generate its budget. And so our particular interest and focus is on how it relates to the DCRC, Davenport Civil Rights Commission, and the treatment of the Davenport Civil Rights Commission's budget requests and submissions. And so looking back at the budget process, slide 5, can you show me where that consideration is given for the DCRC, its submitted budget request?
Now, when Latrice submits the budget to...
On slide number 5, I was looking at the budget process. Slide 5.
Yes.
On slide 5, you say that's the budget process. So somewhere in there, the DCRC submits a budget request based on the instructions that are handed out. That what happened? The budget process says that the departments submit budget requests sometime during the period of September through November. And so I'm assuming
okay.
the commission, being
There you go.
the departments, they would submit a budget request for their operations for the next budget period.
So I'm going to take this question. I'm Basha, the controller / interim budget officer. And each department is requested to enter a munis entry of their budget request. And that time frame is from September 16th through October 18th. At that time, once all of the requests have been submitted, every department is required to do the same. So all the departments have the deadline of October 18th. Once that submission has been done, the finance department will review those requests. And then what we do is we have a department meeting with each individual department going over the requests that they have. They also, the departments are also required to submit any requests that are over $10,000 on a separate form with the business case. Once those are submitted, the finance department reviews those as well and sees if we can match up funding, available funding to the request. Okay? A lot of times, if it's an expense that is like a capital improvement project type expense, those are a lot easier to fund because we have a lot more funding available. Like our local option sales tax can fund some of those requests. Our road use tax fund can fund some of those requests. Some of the issues that we run into with departments being strictly funded by general fund is that that general fund is limited on how much we can spend each year. And so that becomes an issue. But when those requests are made for over $10,000, the finance department reviews them, sees if we can find some funding source for it. And then if we can, they will be approved. And if we can't, unfortunately, those requests are denied. Those requests are also reviewed with the city administrator to make sure that they fall within the council's priorities.
That's good.
Yeah, but if last year was good,
That's only for the business case if it's over 10,000. The initial base budget.
oh, well, we're not allowed to change your question is what happens I think you guys find that.
Yeah, they're basically also.
Well, if we're starting out with reserve reserve and we don't have any questions related to the rest, and last year we never considered what the well, they are
So one of the discussions is with the onset of the process, which is the survey that kicks it off. Is there anything in the survey that directs back to the Supervisor Commission that addresses the commission?
I have a example of the 2024 survey here, and I don't think there's anything specific to civil rights, but I think that that's something that we could have added in the future.
And looking at that, I mean, it says your priorities are the infrastructure, streets, neighborhoods, police services, et cetera. But there's nothing that really addresses that area of the municipality, the supervisor. And so it's something that you could touch on to possibly include something or have some input into how that survey is generated.
That's a great point, and I can talk to the administrative team. They're the ones that actually compile that and put that out, but that's a good point that we could have that added, or something added to that.
Yes, that is the foundation of all those decisions that you're gonna make further down the line. So without any input there, then obviously there would be nothing that would require anything to address the Civil Rights Commission's concerns. There is nothing
one of the questions is moving the fair housing, the salaries out of that fair housing fund.
Okay,
Because the amount that we get from our contractor is always less than what is budgeted to the fair housing account. And so, I think for the commission, when they look at it, and probably for council too, it looks like we are getting this, the amount at the bottom put into that account, but that's not really what goes into the account. And so then it ends up looking like there's a deficit, but it looks like we're going over the amount that's budgeted for the account, but we really aren't, because this amount never goes into the account. Does that make sense?
So Director Lacy, I will actually take that question if that's okay. I know you've mentioned that last year even, when you saw the transfer from the general fund to the fair housing fund, and it kind of appeared that you went over budget, and that wasn't necessarily the case. So in order to address your concern this year, I actually, in our audited financials, I moved some of those expenditures for salaries out of the fair housing fund into the general fund, so that it reflects more of the reality of how much funding you received in fiscal year 2024 towards salaries. So I attempted to address that with this current year in fiscal year 2024.
So which ones are moved out?
It would be reflected in the actuals, yes.
is that why it's $111,000?
I'm not sure when you printed this report.
No, literally today.
Okay. Yes, that's why the salary line on here, if you can see the full-time salaries, is much lower than what was actually paid, is because some of the expenditures were moved to the general fund, so that you did not have the overage.
So then does that amend the general fund too? Or does that then look like the general fund?
The general fund took on the civil rights expenditures, the ones that were reallocated.
But then, is it amended or is it still looking like we are over what is budgeted?
So, because it's so late, we won't amend the budget again. We just have to stay within the guidelines that the state puts in. So we just need to be within the function of the budgeted amount, and it did not put us over in that category. So we didn't have to amend the budget. We only amend the budget once a year, which is typically in the spring. And that's the only time that we amend the budget. In my tenure here, we've amended the budget twice in 1 year, and that was in fiscal year 2023, but that was the only time that we actually amended a budget twice. Otherwise, we only do one amendment to make sure that we stay within the state's guidelines.
So then fiscal year 25, is this the full amount back there again, or is it?
So fiscal year 25, we have not amended anything, and we can certainly review what you get for your contract. I believe that contract starts October 1st with the federal year that, with the federal fiscal year, I believe it starts October 1st. So if you'd like us to review the revenues that we have budgeted for fiscal year 25, I'm more than welcome to do that.
So if it's never going to be 162,000, maybe I misunderstood what you were saying. Are we permanently moving this amount out of the fair housing fund into the general fund, or is that done as an amendment every year?
So that was done this time around just as kind of making the actual costs closer to what your actual agreement was, your contract was for salaries. We wanted to make sure that it's trued up with the revenues that you actually received for administrative costs.
So, but if we wanted to move that out of this account altogether to put like all of the salaries together in the general fund, what would be the process of doing that?
We would have to make the determination if there's enough funding in the general fund in order to move them all. Typically, we only grow our expenditures in the general fund based on the growth of the property taxes. So in order to stay conservative with our budgeting, if property taxes only grow by 3%, we only like to grow the expenditures by 3% so that we do not overexpend those funds.
So question, on your budget timeline, it says you do a departmental budget to review the budget. So this would have been a conversation that would have taken place during that review. I'm kind of thinking this kind of conversation would have come up at that point.
That would be correct, yep.
So and that has not taken place for
26.
26.
Yep, I believe those,
This is the 25 budget.
yep, so those meetings for the fiscal year 2026 meetings are scheduled between October 28th and November 12th, and we will definitely address any concerns that each department has, including the civil rights department. And a lot of, we also take into consideration, I know Director Lacy has a concern with how much revenue we budget for the fair housing contract, and a lot of times those numbers are not available until more closer to the beginning of the federal fiscal year, which is October 1st. So a lot of times it's just a guesstimate of the dollar amounts that we're going to receive.
Well, not the revenue, it's just that we would never receive $150,000 from a contract. And so if we are budgeting for there to be $150,000 in expenditures, we would never need that. And so it's like we're building in an overage every year into our budget. And I think for the commission and probably for council too, it looks like we're going over budget every year because there has to be this transfer into the fair housing fund. And then it looks like, okay, well, we budgeted them for $150,000 and then we had to transfer $50,000 or $100,000 into it because they spend $200,000 or $250,000. When in actuality, we wouldn't have even spent the full $150,000.
Yep, and I totally understand that, and we can definitely do a better job of guesstimating those revenues and make sure that we match the revenues with the expenditures so that we are not over budgeting that revenue line. And we can certainly discuss that during our departmental meeting.
And I think the other thing that the commission wanted was to see where the revenue comes in. From what we can see is like not shown, and so it looks like we've got the money, but we don't know what it's offsetting.
And we can certainly show you the revenue lines that come in to the Fair Housing Fund. That's not an issue. It's just a little tweak to the report that you received. And I think that's really important is that you kind of give us a guideline of what you want to see on that report. And we can definitely make a report that works for you, Director Lacy, as well as the commission, so that it's easily understandable. And you all know where all the funding is coming in and where it's going out. We can certainly do that.
Director Lacy, are you referring to the general fund or fair housing? Because like the fair housing, I've done some analysis on what the growth of the general fund has been. And, in 22, it actually went down like 0.26%. In 23, it increased 2.98%. In 24, it went up 2.04%. And then 25, it went up 9.98%. But that's because we consolidated the emergency fund and the library fund into the general fund. But then I analyzed how much how much the Civil Rights Department has received during that same period. And in '22, your general fund went up 5.4%. And I'm talking about the budget amount. In '23, went up 9.9%. In '24, went up 14.02%. So, I mean, historically, the Civil Rights Department has received more than what the increases have been to the general fund.
That's in what line item?
See, that's a revenue, and that's based on property taxes. So there's really no, you have to look at the property taxes in total to evaluate that.
So you're saying our budget went up that amount, or that's how much of the percentage of revenue?
The percentage of the general fund went up, the budgeted amount for the expenses for the Civil Rights Department went up those other, the higher amounts. Basically, it's about 2% that the general fund has been increasing.
Is that because of the transfer for 24?
I believe
24, that may be the case.
Jim is using budgeted numbers, right?
Yes.
So it would not be the transfers.
Okay.
So that's not the numbers that are reflected here.
No, no.
So are we using the full amount that it went up?
No, I don't think that you go hit the budget amount. No.
This was, but we weren't sure which information. I think looking at this, hard to figure out exactly what it is. And then when stuff like this, that's $50,000. So, right now it's not.
At this point, we're not, we don't have the grain that we need to actually look at this based on what you've given us. So we're going to have to put this on hold and go back, and based on those reports that she can generate, and we'll go back and pull some more data.
And if you want to, yeah, if she wants to take some time to review it, and she feels that she wants the report changed in any way, I can work with her to accomplish that too. I'm happy to help her out with whatever.
Is there a time frame with this thing?
Okay.
Okay, but I think, thank you for the presentation on the briefing, and Director Lacy's gonna come back, give you parameters of the reports,
Okay.
and we're gonna look a little closer at this and get back.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Turn this back over to Commissioner Francis. Yes, he's here.
So we did a roll call, we did the agenda, minutes and all that good stuff, right?
We approved the minutes.
Okay, so we let the director report. So we'll,
We got the approval of the minutes, didn't we? Yeah.
I have a question on that. So, Mr. Lacy, are they going to then put the salaries of the fair housing grant under the general account? Is that what they're going to? No. So what were they talking about that she's gonna, they moved it?
She moved it for last year.
Oh.
So that's why it says 91 up here,
Mm-hmm.
and then 43 down here, but that's still over what we received, this 111.
Okay.
The,
I wish somebody would explain that to me, that what that top line meant and what the bottom line meant, because I was trying to find that and I didn't see that.
they have it broken out into different accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So this first is 010 general fund,
Mm-hmm.
and then trust and agency is just our insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fair housing fund is where they are supposed to be putting the HUD money and the EDC money and the ICR. So that all goes in here, but it's not shown anywhere
Right.
on the documents that we can see. So it's hard to be able to compare it or be able to even print this out and give it to the commission and say, this is what we got.
Mm-hmm.
It's not shown there anywhere. And it's hard to follow along because a little bit of it is, the city's fiscal year is July to June.
Mm-hmm.
And then the federal fiscal year is October to September.
Right.
And they don't, align it. I don't know how that process works, but it's, so the money crosses over fiscal years for the city fiscal year, but it's not reflected anywhere on any of the documents that we can see. So it's like, if we get $90,000 from HUD, and we don't remind them to cross over fiscal year, then we show a zero.
Carry over.
And so it's like,
So those things that you're going to add, have them put on.
I guess we can ask them to add the revenue there somewhere so we can actually see it, and then maybe that can show what our actuals are and what how much we have left. Then we can have that as the amount that we see here, but I can't currently see that.
Well, you can design your reports now, and then based on the
Right.
conversation we had, you can say, hey, look, I want to see this, this, and this. And so design the report so that it's beneficial to you. That's
I
it.
wish they would have shown us our sources of funding, you know, like I know we did something down in the city, but
The
they
general
also
fund.
cut,
So that's the general fund.
that's the general fund, that's, yeah, that's the city. Okay, and then does it show us, oh, the trust and agency is how it.
That's all, that's the city too.
Fair housing is what you're looking for. Yeah.
Okay, so we only get funding from two sources.
That's 4, came from HUD, EEOC, and ICRC.
Oh, okay,
But it all, I think, goes into the fair housing fund.
okay.
That answer changes sometimes.
Yeah.
What we're told, but we just can't see it. And so, like last year, they forgot to draw down the funding from HUD for the year before. So then it was a larger transfer into the fair housing fund. And it's still not reflected in where the 2 years worth of funding that they put down at the same time. And so it's,
If they do that, is that make them want to give us that? Because it's like there's a lot of money there in the transfer. So it almost makes me think that they would not give us as much stuff in next year.
over HUD or for,
Well, yeah, when they have that much left over.
so,
So,
no, we're getting paid, so it's not a grant. That was why we keep it, why we keep it as a grant. It's a contract, so they pay us per case.
yeah.
So they're paying us how many cases we process. So that part wouldn't be reduced. The only part that is not based on case processing is the partnership funding. And so I'm noticing that that's showing in fiscal year 2025, and we have not received any for fiscal year 2025 yet. So that 15,000 and the 5,000, that was actually fiscal year 24. But it's hard to keep track of it when it's not being reflected at the correct time and in the correct area. And then, but this amount down here is just a moving number. And I think that that's confusing for the commission, and then it's confusing for council, because their council is having to approve that amendment every year when they add money into the fair housing fund. So it goes up on the screen as we figure it number, and this is what we have to transfer into the fair housing fund. And so it looks like, well, why does the commission keep going over budget, spending more than what they get into the fair housing fund? So we really aren't even spending the amount of budget.
So you get a chance to,
They don't.
Yeah, see, that's the problem, they can understand it either.
you get a chance to address that with council when it goes back to the council for review.
No. Nope. So that's, for quite a while, I didn't even know when they were doing it. I just had to monitor this. So they weren't even giving us notice that they were amending it.
Oh, wow.
Even just now, when she just said about moving that money, she didn't tell me that she was doing that. So I'm finding out about it during this meeting.
If she do,
That's why that report, the report that you, when you table that, all of these stuff that you ought to be able to look at it and tell you what's going on with your budget, throughout the year, from month to month and stuff, so,
Yeah, it can be as detailed as it's like it.
yeah, exactly.
It's like, slow walking, but we make a distraction.
so did they ever contact you on that October 28th and November 12th? Where it says departmental budget meetings to review budget?
So that's the meeting that we had. This one I didn't, don't have the name. And that's usually the window. I need to look back through my email to see about the October 18th, because that has never been explained. We returned that in the case before we had the meeting.
Hmm.
That's why I wrote it. That is the look back to my email, to exactly what it said. But that's never been explained, and it's not used this year. So usually we meet with that, and that's when they say, I didn't know about it. And it's usually a meeting about the budget process. So that's been.
So have they agreed to pay you directly? It's still up in the air. So should that be on her too?
Well, they're pretty much fine. That's their position on it. They're not gonna do it until it's commission.
Was that the discussion for this meeting or the other meeting we had? Well, her back thing, I thought that was part of that discussion.
I don't think we talked about the back pay,
Matson?
I thought we would come up.
You about the meeting over in City Hall? We didn't talk about that, baby. When we were all over there in the city.
Yeah.
I thought that was one of the issues that we addressed. Concern, yeah.
Well, but there may have been concern, but we didn't, I don't think we talked about it in great detail. I mean, we probably brought it out. Let me put it like this here. We brought a whole litany of, things out
Right.
and stuff, and so,
Yeah.
yeah.
So then you have the lawsuit to get that, right? Okay. And then we wanted that, we did all the, right?
Before you go in the report, let me just say something. Our last meeting, we were, on our last case, guys, let me just say, I will be cordial to everybody, and I expect, commissions to do the same thing. And, if you raise your voice at me, you'll get a side of me that you really don't want to see. I mean, I'm respectful to everybody. And, I expect to get the same thing back from you guys. If you don't want to answer a question that I ask you, just tell me that you don't want to answer the question. And I don't care who you are, but, you know, I got this inferiority complex about people when they holler at me. I respond in a way sometimes that's not very nice. And so I try my best not to go there. So I'm just telling everybody to know that and stuff. I try to, in every situation, treat people with dignity and respect, whether you're black, white, red, or yellow. And so I just want everybody to know that we all have some respect for one another as we talk to each other. Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Ellis.
Do you have any road this year, this year in September? September is our year end for, all UNC county. And we got a new contract for UNC, which is the integrated market for this is what the department. I'm going to do that now. For HUD, so far we have received $89,000. And that's just for our content project, so we have using funding for partnership or team something with the professional enforcement. We do have three stages that are in public hearing now, and they didn't add those to our payment for this year. So our monitor said they'll add them for next year, which is not November. So that's to be an extra $24,000 for next year. Funding for the actual case, and then again, the additional $5,000 for the public hearing. So we have those three out of public hearings that are on, and then I guess while talking about that, I noticed during the conference that we are the highest performing municipal fat rate. And we have for a couple of years. So that's good news. I never thought we would look
How
at.
is it the highest performing municipal, I mean, the whole city?
City.
All
They
the
have
city agencies.
more.
So that includes the recognition and all the other departments.
Or the fact agencies are fair housing, this department, so any agency that has a contract with us. So we've got more cases and then we also. So the next role is going to have 11 cases. The city is reviewing reviewing, property code updates. There are a few different things, I need to take some more time to look at it, because when I initially said I just looked at the ones that were on the agenda, for the last meeting, for the first meeting. And it's, they're adopting the 2021, international building code, the fire code, 2021 national residential code, and then the 2021 international property maintenance code, and then they're updating the rental code. When I initially glanced at the document that they had attached to it shows some, edits to certain code sections, but when I looked at this week's agenda, it has more amendments than what are listed on the notice. I'm not sure why that is, I think usually you have to, the code sections on the notice, cover sheet, that you will have to amend, you will publish, notice of what you're changing. So I need to look back at it, and look more closely at all of the sections that are being amended, because it's not really the ones that are listed there. But one of the things that kind of stood out for me, the building code has requirements for elevators, the fire code does too. Currently, the state has like exempted itself from the property maintenance code relating to elevator segments. So these buildings are supposed to be enforcing the building code to build the state laws. Because the city ordinance does say that, they haven't been doing that, so we just get those complaints and accept the complaints. And so, as of right now, probably 30 to 40% of the houses elevators, obviously. And if we had some enforcement mechanisms in the city, for somebody else to do that, that would greatly alleviate our case. And it would also create
So I think that those changes, and so they changed it to international building from, took the city out of it, from the city's name off of it, made it international. So they basically say we're adopting the international business code or something. I really wasn't quite,
it's not posted. That was the,
yeah,
that was the part that I was like, where's the actual building code?
right.
It's not posted with it. Under the ADA and fair housing, they incorporate portions of it by reference. So those are listed out both in the ADA and fair housing and these regulations, so that you can go to them and see what's required as the improvement for property maintenance. So like, there's a requirement for there be backup power for an elevator under the building code, and that's incorporated into the ADA. So that's something that we would know just from looking at it. But some of them, I don't know what they are, so I'm gonna have to go back through and like cross-reference the building code, the fire code, residential code, and the residential rental code with the ADA and fair housing act to see if they match up or if there are
They
still
cover it, yeah.
deficiencies. Yeah.
Because they just kind of took themselves out of it and called it the international code. And in the past, they had, it was a municipal code or a Davenport code or something. Now it's international. So, it was just an area that jumped out because you changed the name of it, signifying that, hey, it's not my code. I'm just kind of using it.
Oh, that's normal for municipalities to adopt international.
Oh, okay.
Davenport was very abnormal, not happy, because it creates basically like completely different mechanisms for owners and builders when they're opening like a new building or building a new structure or doing alterations and stuff. So then they were having to figure out what Davenport's requirements were versus the international building code.
But they didn't change the code, they just changed the name. You know, from what I saw, it was just a name change. They didn't actually change the content of
That was where my what is it changing here?
Yeah.
But it's a different code. So the one that they were referencing before is a completely different code.
Oh, okay, it's kind of confusing me.
And so they're saying we're gonna adopt the international building code now, whereas we were using other codes for.
Let me go back and look at that again.
But then it doesn't say where it's covered in, I guess was my confusion, because it lists out the sections within the city code of what they have.
Right.
And then it is referencing the international building code or something. But I think I'm gonna have to go line by line to figure out what exactly we're referencing, what we're covering.
Very confusing.
Yeah. And I think that that might end up being a legal challenge for the middle school, because it's- as I was looking at it, I was confused on what exactly they were putting in, because when I read the cover sheet, it said they were adopting the building code, and then when you look at it, the operation that they made through the document, it's like they're adopting it as well.
Yeah.
And there were some provisions in the city ordinance that exempted it. I think I'm gonna have to go through and look at the sections that are not included here in this package. This is an actual code to figure out what is exempted and what isn't, and then see what cross-references back to us. And if there's, something that is actually useful for our office versus the way that it is currently set up in the fire marshal level and enforce issues with this town. And that's right, and that might also with their house. And I'm gonna have to look at it way more in depth than what I did. I just reviewed it to see where it got exactly. But then when I looked at this, again, I thought, oh no, this is way more information. So I'm gonna have to look at that. You don't think it'd be okay? Yeah. Because it got confusing. I didn't figure out what exactly we're saying here.
I read one in the paper about the guy that was having a hard time. He said that he had come from Denver before. That was kind of bad.
And that's a lot of the frustration that people have. And it's, you know, community all the time. One of the changes that we made with people, right, repair, it's not using the same language that's used under state law. And I'm not clear on what the process is for obtaining this. So typically, the city's rental code is regulating the relationship between the city and property owners. And then the tenant is going under landlord tenant law under state law. That's the regulation of their relationship. The way that that portion is written, it is kind of an amalgamation of the relationship between the property owner, the city, and the tenant. And it's not clear if that is going to supersede state law. And it might end up actually creating a longer waiting period for the tenant to receive some relief, because they would have to wait on the city to come out and do an inspection, declare that something is not in compliance. Then they have to have two people within the city sign off on something that is not in compliance. And then send a notice out to the landlord, giving some opportunity to take the repairs, yeah. And then after they fail to do that, then they can make the rent. But under state law, you just have to give the landlord notice. So is this help or hurt tenants going to draft?
Hurts, sounds like,
So it's,
maybe.
yeah, it's written, it's on there. And I've spoken to, Dennis Clyde, who's working with the tenant one, and they were kind of pushing for this, but they put that. And so he mentioned that there are going to be some amendments to it, and he wasn't sure exactly what they were. But they had proposed it to the city based on Iowa City's proposal. But Iowa City's proposal is different from the city overall. So, you know, this might be just having a similar language as in Iowa City. The overall code is different, so it's going to have different implications. It works in Iowa City because they have all these other provisions that supplement it. Maybe works versus down the court, we have kind of a different setup. Yeah. And we have a lot of, I know, like, you start getting into the details of like exactly what happened and what is going on with the person's housing, but how are we requiring somebody to live in? And the city also sends people to us, so like somebody might call for an inspection because there's a hole in their thing. And then the city will say, okay, well, you didn't fix the hole, so now they have to get out.
So where do they go?
And so the tenant is saying, well, I'm here retaliating against, and I called for,
Right.
code enforcement.
I'm being evicted now.
And they say, oh, what's the definition? They have retaliation. So it's like, we don't handle that retaliation. There's no provision under the city
It's a
code.
never ending cycle, understand?
Yeah. So it's, that would be nice if they included something in the city ordinance that really is retaliation for people who are, experiencing homelessness. And if you think the city doesn't condemn that, if it's something that's going on repair, to keep the property inhabitable, they will like not renew that person's lease. And then the person feels they're going to be receiving it at the end of the day. And they say, you know, go to the commission, they can do that. And then we have to like argue with people. We don't handle that. I know you, we understand that what you're saying is retaliation and that maybe retaliation. We don't handle that. It has to be.
How frustrating for them.
And people are thinking, when you just don't want to help us with the city, they just, no, this just isn't what we have authority to do. So, we're there, and I'll try to keep it better out. As written, things that we're. So at the conference, Mr. Boyd shared his experience with the environmental justice issues with the training. And so I had a pretty brief conversation with the lady who was presenting the PA, and she was very interested in having a conversation with the about her experience. And so that's what we had a couple of PAs doing it. Every environmental impact, and then also with the housing, and then you can find it just because of how close the housing was to the rail line, and giving people kind of this, a first person account, but then also putting in place that this is the kind of thing that we're talking about, this is how this affects people. It's not just, complaining, this is that. And it might not be, but this is something that occur every day, but it's something that could happen. We're going to keep in contact. Even though it's because of the experience. But they were very impressed with us. And then, and we have a new person who started on Monday. That's kind of finishing up a more immersive training for them, so that we can have a really good.
Let's see, I had a person, man, I'm really am, I was beginning to think that. That's where I'm from, yeah.
I think that goes with like the lower wages, so it's hard to find, people who are qualified and actually want to work here. It's really big thing. The pay is much less than basically what you can find that legal experience with maybe an attorney, and then offering them $50,000 or $60,000. No thanks.
Too late to pick up somebody, that's good. On the serious side of it.
So he's gonna come in, as president, and this is virtual, Cases that we have, no new employment cases, 160 over, 2,000 cases, 58 now, no We got really good feedback from the attendees. They said they were good, thanks to us for hosting.
Before the Director Lacy, the class was very well put together. I thought it was some great information. One of the classes I heard before and stuff, but I thought it was great reinforcement, and I thought it was very timely and very useful. And it was just a great job all around. So thanks for putting that on.
That's what everybody said.
One of the meals was like a dinner meal, gosh, and we get that for lunch. It was good.
The information
Yeah.
is definitely,
Yeah.
I mean, coming in here and training is everything, permission, because we have to, that's how we operate. So the topics were great.
Yeah.
The speakers were good, I'm with Mike. I think it was excellent.
Well, it came that I spoke, that I complained about, was getting a ticket for parking in the parking lot there. You know,
In the parking lot.
ladder across, we walk across the
Got it.
skyline to the parking,
Ramp,
yeah,
you got a ticket in the ramp?
I mean, I ticket, $25.
How do you get a ticket?
She didn't, put in her license plate. Those machines are right there in the parking, on the outside as well as when you come inside, there's a parking machine. So you have to know your driver's license, and you pay $4 to park there for 8 hours.
You could probably challenge it, they probably give you some relief, that, since we have that conference,
If it's convenient, you have to do it right away, you don't do it to get
There's quite a few companies there, and we have to tell people, that's what you have to do there.
I would try.
So you park on the weekend.
That
I would
was
say,
confusing.
And everybody give us your review of the parking.
I was outside.
I found
I moved
out
mine, I
the
just moved mine.
$25 receipt.
And the second day, I forgot to move my car, and I didn't get a ticket.
I got it the first day.
You park on the street?
Because we had to unload all the stuff from my car.
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned to get there, except for the parking, right there. Because that's a long walk from the parking ramp to all the way to the building.
I parked on the street for days.
And I only moved my car the
And the
first
back
day,
hill
the
there.
second day,
Yeah.
we didn't have a break.
Right.
So I didn't get out there to do it, and I
Yeah.
expected it.
Oh, all right.
But there was no ticket down there. But it wasn't very busy, there was nobody around really.
It didn't matter, they come by and it makes it worse than anybody else there.
Right, it's just started in 2 hours.
I've been there all day.
Anyway,
It's possible to take a picture of the ball before we go. Each time we leave, because different. I take pictures of our meeting outside, on the, and I said, have somebody, and borrow somebody's.
Oh, I'll take a picture and send it to you.
I'll just do it on there. I'm just trying
Trying to jump out of the picture.
Where are we on this agenda?
we about ready
Okay.
to close down here. Frank, okay, we're down to public comments, so, and, there are no people from the public, so, Jeff, when is our next meeting?
It is November 12th.
November 12th.
November.
Is that in person?
No, I don't have it down there.
Okay, so that's, I just want to make sure I get it in my mind.
And put it on my calendar.
Veterans Day.
It's right after.
Okay, I just wanna make sure I got it in my mind where, it's Zoom.
It's the week after election.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they can't come back.
So we didn't home on the eighth, but I'm
Okay. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to, if no one has any more comments, anything that they'd like to, make, I'll entertain a motion to close.
As soon as, Commissioner Howard finishes, set up.
Well, we can close.
We can close. Okay. I move that we.
Commissioner Davis, second that.
It's been properly moved by Commissioner Boyd, second by Commissioner Upchurch Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Ayes have it.
Can you make off in a few minutes?